Well, hello everybody and welcome to my show. My name is Jason DeCosta, and that was some gangster Rizap busting it out for you one time. Trying not to get killed on the highway. Big old truck rambling by at about 80 miles an hour. Anyways, folks, that was some rap music, not to be confused with trap music, and I play that from now every time and again, here and there, just to kind of like get under people's skin, because I know that they probably hate rap, because that's kind of something that, if you're a Christian, you don't really partake in. Unless, of course, it's like one of those Christian rappers like Lecrae. I think that's his name, Lecrae, right? And all the Christians are like, oh, no, he didn't. Oh, he burned him, got him, flex on him, son. And he's just spitting about, like, this fairy tale Holy Spirit and, like, God killing all kinds of innocent people through Noah's thing and just enjoying it, So it's kind of weird. But anyways, a little rap for you to open up. Folks, as I'm driving today, I want to put together a little, or at least begin to put together a little mini-series. And by mini, I probably mean just 2 parts. And the mini-series is going to be on Abraham's seed. Okay, and what it's going to do is it's kind of going to start out and just kind of pick up some information along the way, and then I think in part 2 I'll bring it full circle so you can see the end. So kind of like a big quick jump through the whole Bible, minus a gazillion details. All right, so in the beginning we start out with this patriarchal backstory, beginning with this first man, Adam, who knows, right? Who knows if he's a literal man? Who knows if he represents Israel? One thing that I am absolutely 100% certain of, though, is that he is highly symbolic of the law situation that Israel was in. He represents everything that they went through. He represents the transgressing of the covenant. He represents the violation of the law and the imputation of sin. He represents being exiled from the promised land. He represents being put together and made and formed from the dust and sort of brought into this garden land, garden of Eden, which of course we know Israel had the same thing symbolically happen to them in Ezekiel 36 and 37. We see Israel portrayed as a man laying sort of dead in the dust of the earth, and God breathes life into this man and puts skin over its bones and everything. And the imagery here is literally all about the children of Israel coming back from their dead, hopeless places out in the nations and returning to Jerusalem. And I'm not making this stuff up. Go check it out. I have a ton of audios on Ezekiel as well, so check them out. Familiarize yourself with this stuff, because it's all over there. So who knows about Adam, right? But as the story proceeds, we see it go to Noah, whom some of the earlier Jewish writings actually refer to as their early ancestor, Noah. And then it goes forward, and then you get to Abraham, and you know how the story goes, right? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then you come to the 12 tribes of Jacob, or the 12 tribes of Israel, okay? And once you get to this point in time, all of a sudden the story just kind of like locks right in, right? So the first 20, 30 pages of the Bible, you're kind of just floating through different tales or different oral traditions, different accounts of patriarchs, right? And of course, everybody looks at those like, ooh, ah, this is so important, ooh, ah, right? But no ooh, ah. Okay, this is just setting the stage for who's really important in the story. It's prepping you as you read through the backdating or the backstory to when Israel becomes the 12 tribes, okay? So now you're smack dab locked and loaded on Israel, and you're going forward. But let's backtrack to Abraham once again, right? And let's talk about the promise that he made to Abraham, that his descendants, not seed, although some translations also include seed descendant, it's the same thing. But most of them will say that his descendants will become like the stars of heaven in number, and his seed would be like the sand on the seashore in terms of multitude. They would be such a great multitude that no man could number. And so everybody likes to say, well, Abraham had other kids and all their stuff, and Adam had other kids and all that stuff. Well, guess what? All that stuff is irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. Again, it's just you looking too hard into details that are not meant for you to really understand. But what's important to take notice of in the story is Israel, okay? Because Israel is the one who is told that they are a chosen people. They are held high above all other people. They are set high above. They had this amazing responsibility, this law system. And guess what Moses warns them of in the beginning over and over and over again? And by golly, that's right, I said by golly, Christians do not even know this fact. That Moses in the beginning outlines a curse. Talk about letting the story follow its trajectory, folks. Moses outlines for the children of Israel a curse. Moses doesn't outline for anybody else in the entire story. It doesn't matter whose sons they were, whose brothers they were, whose cousins they were, if they were Auntie Betty and Alabama's two-toothed cousin. It didn't matter, right? It didn't matter how they were related. This story zooms in on Israel, and it lets you know that all that other stuff is outside noise. They were the ones under the law, they were the ones in covenant, and they were the ones under the curse. And they were also the ones who were promised to be scattered into the nations, paganized, dispersed everywhere. But at the end of the story, God would have mercy upon them and bless them. And as we see in the end of the last days New Testament, they are taken to this age to come where they're immortalized, if that's even a word, and glorified and turned into angels, saying no more pain, tears, death, celebrating and singing by the throne. Okay, so try to follow the trajectory here, okay? Moses comes along and says to the Israelites around the same time that he outlined the curse, he says, you have become like the stars of heaven in number. He literally tells them that they, the Israelites, had fulfilled the promise to Abraham regarding his seed. Let me repeat that. Moses is telling the Israelites that they had fulfilled the promise to Abraham regarding Abraham's seed. They had become like the stars of heaven in number. They had become a great and mighty multitude. Do you realize what this means, folks? What this means is that Israel is given the designated term Abraham's seed. Okay? Now look, I get it. There's one place in Galatians 3 that makes it seem as though Jesus is the seed, singular. I get it. Everybody harps on this verse like it's life or death, right? And honestly, to me, the verse is questionable, but let's just say, fine, you can take it. Jesus is a singular seed there, okay? It's fine. But guess what else you have to deal with? You have to deal with a boatload of fullness and completion and numeric fullness arguments and proof texts as well. And what do those proof texts tell you? They tell you that Abraham's seed was going to be fully gathered in by the end. They tell you that the promise would be sure to all the seed. Romans 4:16. Sure to all the seed, folks. That's plural. That is not sure to all the Jesus Christs. That's sure to all Israel. And Paul's goal was all Israel saved. Wouldn't you know it? So the point here is that yes, Galatians 3 may refer to Christ as the singular seed, but we cannot forget that at the same time, if that is the case, it doesn't change in any way, shape, or form the fact that there was a mission to save all the seed, plural, Israel. You can't take that designated name away from Israel. It's given to them from jump. So we have this people that is under the curse. We have their story as they go through. And then we come to an account in Genesis 48, which talks about Manasseh and Ephraim. And the promise that's made in Genesis 48 about this Ephraim son is that his descendants would become a great multitude of nations. Or it's otherwise worded as a fullness of nations. So let me make sure you understand that. Ephraim, who would later be the name given to the northern kingdom of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, Ephraim's descendants would become a great multitude of nations, or aka it's also called in some translations a fullness of nations. They would become a fullness of nations. In other words, a great multitude of nations. And that's the same verse that Paul uses, or the same exact phrase that Paul uses in Romans 11:25 when he talks about gathering in the fullness of the Gentiles, aka nations, same word, fullness of the nations, and in that way all Israel would be saved. Do you see how easy this is? Okay, so Genesis 48 literally tells you that the Israelites were going to become many, many nations. Many, many nations, okay? Now, when we get to the New Testament, we have this mysterious mission that's going out. Now, of course, I've jumped over other dispersions as well, like when Assyria dispersed the northern kingdom in 722 BC. That happened, supposedly, to the story, according to the story. So there were Israelites everywhere. The northern kingdom of Ephraim were everywhere. Okay? But when we come to the New Testament last days, we see this mission going out for the lost sheep. We see Jesus say he comes not only for the Jewish fold, but also to the sheep spread abroad, or the sheep not of this fold, he calls them. Okay, we see this mission going out for Israel near and Israel afar off. And so we have all these clues that these are Israelites all throughout the New Testament. Now, granted, there may be a few loophole theology passages that Joe Simpson and guys like Adam Marshak and others, they like to harp upon. There may be, but trust me, they pale, absolutely pale in comparison to the amount of IO proof in the New Testament. It's not even close. Not even close. And the IO proof, what's great about the IO proof is it's 100% clear, direct, and straight to the point. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. For instance, Jesus saying he only came for them. Revelation 14 saying nobody but them could sing about redemption because they, the 12 tribes, were the ones redeemed from the earth. These are clear passages that don't give any arguments a chance to even breathe. On the other hand, the loophole theology passages are questionable at best and oftentimes translated oddly. Okay? But again, the proof is in the pudding. It's a monster to a little moth in terms of proof. But when we come to the New Testament, we see things like Paul saying to the Gentiles in Romans 9, he's like, is God also having mercy upon the Gentiles? And he quotes all these passages about lost, scattered, dispersed Israelites. Literally quotes and defines who they are by quoting these passages. These were who the Gentiles were. Paul is clearly saying that. That's the mystery. Now, this is actually only going to be one part. I just decided because I kind of already went through the whole Bible here. Funny how that works. But let's go ahead and wrap this thing up together and put a nice little bow on it. So we have all these things going on in the New Testament where Paul and all the other apostles and whatnot are gathering in the lost sheep. Okay? We have Paul writing to the Corinthians and telling them that all their fathers passed through the Red Sea with Moses. I mean, come on. We have Paul writing to Galatians and telling them that Christ has died for us and all of us under the curse because all of us were under the curse because we were under the law and we didn't do all things written in the book of law. I mean, come on. Right? Ephesians, you who once walked according to the course of this world, he's now been, washed and brought back and all this stuff. You were once Gentile in the flesh, meaning you were uncircumcised, you were like the pagan, but God has redeemed you and called you home. The prodigal son, right? Parable of the lost son rolling with the nations and the coming back and provoking the stay-at-home son to jealousy. All these things, right? All the things in Revelation that at the very end we get glimpses into the final scene in heaven and it's only the 12 tribes there. Right? I mean, all these things that just scream. Writing to Colossians, Paul tells them they were dead in the trespass of being uncircumcised. Well, how could you be dead in a trespass if you were never given the commandment to begin with? Because that was a commandment only for Israel. So now, but remember who Abraham's seed is, right? Who we clearly defined Abraham's seed as. I think it's Isaiah 41 or 45. It says, Jacob my beloved, or Israel, my friend, or no, I loved you, Israel, Abraham's seed, my friend, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing because I'm crazy and I teach the Bible while doing 85 on the highway. But you know what I'm talking about, right? Abraham's seed is always Israel in the story. Sure, he had other descendants, but the story doesn't care. The story doesn't want you to focus on the other descendants. The story doesn't even give you any information on the other descendants, besides a little mention here or a mention there. And then all these wackadoodle wannabes, they're like, oh, look at this. This must be our hope. Look at how these ones are mentioned over here, right? Give me a break. Let the story be a story. Let it say what it says. The ones clearly in focus when it comes to the curse and salvation are the covenant people. And so we know who Abraham's seed is. Now remember in the beginning that there was a promise to Abraham, number one, that his seed would multiply like the stars of heaven in number. Well, Israel fulfilled that. I just showed you how. King David, again, in 1 Chronicles 27, when counting the children of Israel for war, said that he did not count the children of Israel who were under 20 years of age because the Lord had promised to multiply them like the stars of heaven in number. That is a direct pull from the promise to Abraham. Therefore, again, showing you who Abraham's seed is in the story. But guess what, folks? Oh, good Lord Almighty. Guess what? Right alongside of that promise that Abraham's seed would become a great multitude and would bloom like the stars of heaven in number is also the promise that in that same seed, many nations would be blessed. In that same seed, right? Because the promise was that his seed would become like the stars of heaven in number, and through his seed, many nations would be blessed. Now, would someone argue that these are two different types of seed here? No. The seed remains the same. The word is descendants. Okay, so we have a promise that Abraham's descendants, that being Israel, would become like the stars of heaven in number. Moses comes along and says, here you go, that's been fulfilled. Israel, you are like the stars of heaven in number. King David literally says that the Lord's promise about multiplying Abraham's seed to the stars of heaven in number was about Israel. 1 Chronicles 27. Read it and weep. So, if the seed, when it comes to the multiplying to great numbers, is Israel, then why isn't the seed that many nations would be blessed in also Israel? But it is. Because remember, Genesis 48 said that Ephraim's descendants, i.e. the descendants of Israel, would literally become a multitude of nations. Would literally become a fullness of nations. Are you catching the power of this? The Israelites are told, point blank, flat out, that they would become a fullness of nations. I showed you how Abraham's seed is Israel. In the beginning, the promise is that Israel would, or that Abraham's seed would multiply like the stars of heaven, and they would also, through them, many nations would be blessed. Okay, now, there's different arguments on that passage. To me, contextually, in that time frame, it was speaking of the land of Canaan, but of course we know there's a lot of physical to spiritual type foreshadowing going on in the Old to the New Testament. But the point is that, folks, this is precisely what takes place in the last days in the New Testament. You have a great multitude from every nation, tribe, tongue, and kindred in Revelation 7, who I have proved top down, left and right, is the 12 tribes of Israel. No questions about it. I'll go to bat with anybody on that topic. You'll lose. Okay? That is the 12 tribes of Israel, and they are, like Revelation 5 says, called out from every nation, tribe, tongue, and kindred. The ecclesia, the called out ones. They're called out from the nations. Well, the promise in Genesis 48 was that Abraham's seed, Israel, would become a great multitude of nations. Well, here we have it, folks. At the very final scene, we have a great multitude from every nation, tribe, tongue, and kindred, having come out of these nations and receiving the blessing. Folks, is this not direct fulfillment of the promise that in Abraham's seed many nations or many peoples would be blessed? Because that's precisely the final scene of the story. I hope people can see that, because that is a huge point. You can argue until you're blue in the face that you're Abraham's seed and that all nations were going to be blessed through Abraham's seed, right? You lose on every front, because, first of all, that was fulfilled in the end. That is the final picture. Remember, the great multitude from all those nations came out from the Great Tribulation period, out from that last day's tribulation period, showing again that that has nothing to do with anybody today. It was the final generation leading up to the coming, the Great Tribulation, where they went through hell, supposedly. And I know it says that all nations of the earth will be blessed, but anybody who knows anything about the Bible knows that all does not mean all. All just means a great multitude. That's really all it means. It means a lot. There's no way that all means all, right? I mean, there's so many examples of showing that. It's just a hyperbolic way of saying that through Israel, many nations or many peoples would be blessed. That's it. That is it. And that is the final picture at the end. When the curtain rolls down, we have Abraham's seed, a.k.a. the 12 tribes of Israel, a.k.a. the only people who were ever called Abraham's seed, standing in heaven, having come out from all types of peoples and nations and tongues. Folks, another hammer down point. No chance for any opposing arguments. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like-a-rooski. If not, take a hike-a-rooski. And we'll catch you on that flip side. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Folks, one last thing I forgot to mention. I'm going to be away the rest of the week. This is going to be my last offering for the week and possibly even for the weekend. But I should be back next week. But I just wanted to give you the heads up. I got a trip going out of country. So I'll catch you on that flippity-floppity peanut buttery flop side. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.